Today's episode of The Thriller Zone is sponsored by Blackstone Publishing and the brilliant new techno thriller 4 Minutes by the #1 internationally best-selling author duo, Brian Andrews and Jeff Wilson. 4 Minutes is available now from your favorite bookseller. Hello and welcome to The Thriller Zone. I'm your host, David Temple, and on today's 177th episode, I am beyond thrilled to welcome Christopher Reich, New York Times best-selling author, hopefully new friend, and just a magnificent human being who's got quite a story to tell. So without any further ado, let's get on into The Thriller Zone. Welcome to The Thriller Zone, Chris Reich.
Great to be here. Thank you, David.
I am so glad we get a chance to sit down. And thank you for making that sojourn from Newport Beach.
That's, being a Los Angelino, that comes with the territory.
Yeah. Well, you didn't even bat an eye at that, so I appreciate that. A lot of people go, I don't want to go across town.
No, my pleasure. For this,
Yeah.
absolutely. It's a must.
Well, you're kind of a big deal.
Well, thank you. I appreciate that.
Really big deal.
Well, I've had my successes, and the most important part is I love what I do.
Yeah.
So, it beats working for a living.
We have so much to cover. As you'll see, I've done my homework. There's something, I'm a kind of a fanatic because I don't just read the book. I study the book and I make notes to myself going, ooh, I like that. And because later when I have free time, I've heard about free time, I will break it down and analyze it and go, what is Chris's magic? So we'll get to that.
I'm ready.
But I mean, come on, 2 series, 7 standalones. I want to mark these because I'm helping edit this show. So I want to give you all the accolades I can. We got the Simon Risk series, right? The Take, Crown Jewel, The Palace, and Once a Thief. Sounds like anything ready for Cary Grant in my book.
It is. They're about to start filming that in England right now. Netflix UK with Edward Berger directing. That's the director of All Quiet on the Western Front. They're casting right now. It took 4 years to get here, but and in innumerable scripts. But it's a go. It's green light. So that's a thrill, and I think he is like a modern day Simon Risk is. A modern day, Cary Grant, rougher around the edges to be sure, a little bit more muscular, been through some tougher times, but he still looks great in like a gray suit from North by Northwest, So.
Nice. It's so random too that I would pull him out of nowhere, that I would pull Cary as a reference.
From our generation, he was my favorite. And in that movie, North by Northwest, and everything he was so classy. And you just have to bring that kind of character. I think he still is an everyman to, the 21st century.
Yeah. By the way, just for record, we are talking about Matterhorn. Well, and we're going to get to that, but I like to back up to get to know you. I will say I have plenty to say about this book. All right, so now the second series, Dr. Jonathan Ransom, Rules of Deception, Rules of Vengeance, and Rules of Betrayal.
That was my biggest selling series. It was great. It was born out of failure. It was born, the book before that was called The Patriots Club, and I loved writing it, and it actually won the first ever International Thriller Writers Award for Best Novel, but it didn't sell. It didn't sell, and it sold so poorly that I could not find a publisher. After having written 5 or 6 books, and as my agent said, Chris, you've spilled so much red ink over this town, no one wants to touch you, So I go, well, what do? He goes, go out there and write the book you've always wanted to write. The best thing you could, the best thing you've ever done, now is the time to do it. So I said, okay, what books influenced me the most?
Okay.
And so I go back, I grew up reading the classics, Tom Clancy, Frederick Forsyth, and Robert Ludlum, right?
Right.
So, of course, and among those, the first among equals was The Bourne Identity. And so I said, I got to write a book that is as exciting as The Bourne Identity. And that book became Rules of Deception. And I remember I wrote it for 1.5 years, just on my own. It's like being a writer is like being in a sub. Once every 6 or 7 months, you surface, you look around, people talk to you, then you go back under it and do your work.
Right.
So I spent like 1.5 years writing this book. And I remember I sent it in to my agent, Richard Pine, and I said, what do you think? And he goes, well, just give me a little bit. I sent it to him on a Friday. He called me Saturday morning. He goes, I read it in 7 hours. He goes, you did it. He goes, I think you did it. So we went out, he goes, and he started showing it to people and to different publishers. And then he goes, Chris, you have to come to New York. All these people want to meet with you, like the 7 big, publishing houses. And David, you know what the first thing they said was?
What?
After turning me down, just not even talking to me 2.5 years before, they go, Chris, we've always wanted to work with you. So that was a good trip to New York. And that book came out and it was a blockbuster. 10,000 copies first week out of Barnes & Noble, number 3 on the New York Times list, full front page rave review from Janet Maslin. It was, that was the zenith of my career. It was one of the great moments when I was in Chicago the night before it came out, and it was at number 200 on Amazon, of all books, of every book. And when I landed in New York, and that review from Janet Maslin raved across the top of the art section to come out, it was number 2.
Wow.
And I remember going, how is this possible? Then I saw the newspaper in the airport.
Right.
And that was a nice moment.
You made a comment as we were warming up before we started the show that those days are not here anymore. Those days are gone after fashion, right?
The days when the public unites around a central title, a central book that kind of captures the national interest, the zeitgeist.
Right.
Very rare now. Very rare. Remember the Da Vinci Code? Everybody read the Da Vinci Code.
Yeah.
Everybody. It sold like 6 million hardcover. Even the book like Into Thin Air from John Krakauer, nonfiction, the Da Vinci Code. You don't find those books anymore that were so, uniting.
Do you think it's because our attention spans have shortened and or too much competition for our attention and or too much competition in general?
All three.
Ugh.
All three. Social media is killing attention span, where people want that dopamine hit every 15 seconds, new page, new picture. The barriers to entry for publishing have been lowered dramatically. So you could publish your own book. So there's a lot more choices, being good, bad, or indifferent. And people just tend to read or look at what they want to look at without kind of opening themselves up to the larger discussion. So like you said, it's a combination of all three that it's made that much harder to have these giant breakout books. The books like, remember those Oprah books?
Oh, yeah.
The Jonathan Franzen, the corrections.
Yeah.
Each book you got on that Oprah list, that's 1 million copies you're going to sell. You're rich if you got onto that list. But more importantly, it gave all of us, having that water cooler conversation.
Yeah.
And it's even harder with TV shows. Game of Thrones was the last one. The Sopranos. Where's our water cooler TV shows now where everyone is talking about the same show, the same book?
Because there's too many choices.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Innumerable choices.
All right. And to wrap that, so we got 7 standalones. Devil's Banker, Invasion of Privacy, The First Billion, The Prince of Risk, The Runner, Number to Count, and The Patriots Club, with Matterhorn makes 15.
Mm-hmm.
Do you prefer standalone or series? Do you have does it matter to you?
It doesn't matter to me. I did set out with the rules of deception to write a series, and I wanted to build a market doing it that way. And I had this great character, Jonathan Ransom, a doctor for Doctors Without Borders. That guy goes around the world, and unbeknownst to him, his wife, who's his assistant, is actually the spy who puts him into position using him as cover for her own work, right? So it was a great kind of Hitchcockian setup where he doesn't even know that he's being used this certain way, and he has to discover, in the course of solving a conspiracy that might, imperil the world, whether his wife loves him, whether what he's been doing has been worth anything, and then discover his own special set of skills, So that was really fun to write. And I'm saying now this book Matterhorn is the beginning of a series, starring Mac Decker, who's a spy that's been out of the game for 9 years for a lot of reasons, basically to save his own skin and to save his family, who, upon learning of the death of his son, is brought back in a big way. And at an older age, at our age or my age, pushing 60, he has to discover, does he still have the right stuff? And this will expand over the course of several books.
You made a mention somewhere along the way, either in social media or in some press, about health and longevity, and maybe your health and longevity and how you stay fit and so forth, which plays a key role in Decker. Tell me about that.
Well, I just think that the world has changed so dramatically in terms of what we are all capable of doing, uh, physically, mentally, as we get older. I mean, all those barriers have disappeared. I mean, my conception of a 65-year-old man when I grew up in the 70s
Yeah.
was a guy that's balding, a little bit bent, he's with his workshop, and now a 65-year-old man, like runs up Mount Everest, right?
Right.
And does a triathlon and or an Ironman and sets a world record. So with the advent of all these supplements, of how we take care of ourselves, proper nutrition, all of us have kind of a capacity or capability to do really super exciting, fun things until we die. The old idea of age used to be that you would get better and then you had this slow senescence. That's
Right.
gone. I want to be part of this box theory where I keep a certain level and then boom, you drop dead or something, at age 85,
Yeah.
So, and I try to bring this into Matterhorn about, this guy is 60 or almost 60, but he's kept himself in great shape. So, hey, for the 35-year-old bad guys, they better watch out.
I dig that. By the way, I just turned 65. So I'm like you. When I was growing up, the 65 was the old guy. Oh, he's retiring.
Mhm.
Now I'm like 65. It's like the new 45. I don't know.
I think it's what we want it to be. And I mean,
Exactly.
you look great. No one would ever say you're 65.
Yeah.
And, if I'm 62, I feel like I'm 40. I don't feel any different from when I'm 40. I'm setting all these goals and, to kind of do one difficult thing a year. It's called a misogi. It's just fun. It's
Yeah.
fun to be alive at this age. And now with my kids grown up, I can, again, concentrate on myself, more on my work, but more on I just got remarried. So things are going great.
Yeah. Oh, good for you. Congratulations. So I want to talk about why I love this book. And I made copious notes in here. And I want to start out with a comment about chapter 1. This is probably, and I highlighted it here because I want to make sure. I don't want to forget anything. One of the best chapter 1s I've ever read. And you mentioned Born Identity earlier. The Born series, my wife and I, Tammy, we'll sit there and watch that series over and over and over. If it comes on a random Sunday and we catch it, we'll go, let's just sit down and watch it as though we had never seen it before. And this has that feeling. So I'm not taking anything away from that franchise because you have your own thing here. But boy, that opening chapter.
Well, thank you. When you're writing a thriller,
Yeah.
you don't have much time to grab people's attention.
Right.
Especially these days, as we were talking about. So I always try extra hard to make the first chapter a grabber, the great inciting incident, to bring people right in to really what is the third act of another story.
Yeah.
So this opens up, this is the end of another two people's story that has been going on for a couple hundred pages before.
Yeah.
And now we're seeing the denouement, the climax.
Yeah.
So it's really fun to write and, write it spare, get people right in there. There's a couple twists that happen right from the beginning. So yeah, I must say I did enjoy writing that first chapter. So thank you.
There, you probably saw the Don Winslow interview last
I did.
week. Yeah. He's become a friend, good guy, great writer. And he made a comment way back when. He said that every word has to pay rent. And I love that. And it reminded me of Elmore Leonard. Take out the stuff that everybody hates, right? And this is that. There isn't a spare. And Tanny was asking me, and I'll refer to that a couple of times. She goes, in 330 and a half pages, how much fluff? I'm like, not a sentence.
Well, I don't know. I'm sure there's a few sentences, but I try to keep it spare now. And the book's shorter than my other ones. It's 85,000 words. My other books are usually 110,000, definitely 100 pages longer. But that wasn't, this book, Matterhorn, was supposed to be an adrenaline ride, a thrill ride from the very beginning. I want to get it right into high gear.
Yeah.
You have this great, fun, exciting beginning first chapter that takes place where else but on the Matterhorn.
Hello.
And then we have I gave myself 20 pages to set things up a little bit more slowly before really, putting into third gear and hitting the accelerator for the remainder of the book. So, I couldn't agree with you more. And, writing is a process. It's a learning process. You said it's 15 books. Wow. And I'm still figuring out how to write better and better, and leaner is always better. Hemingway said, I can tell how good my book is by how many sentences of my favorite sentences I take out, and I leave on the floor. And Don's right. So every word pays rent.
Yeah.
And, so, I've been reading a lot of the book out by Alan First, who writes all these great World War II novels. And he's very concise and pithy and a lot of aperçus, which I love. And I try to work that in now with my dialogue being shorter, crisper. It just, maybe it's just because as you get older, you don't want to put up with the BS anymore. It's like, tell me a story. Let's make it fast. Let's make it great.
Get to the point.
Get to the point.
All right. Because I love visual techniques on the show, what is the fancy word that you just used that I don't know?
Aperçu.
Yeah. What is that?
That means a certain, what's the word? It's a French word. It means not an intimation, but kind of a little pithy observation. It means an observation,
Okay.
little observation about how people think, or, what are they really thinking?
Right.
Something like that. So it's kind of like an insight. It's an insight.
Insight. You work that into your story, don't you? It's almost like, it's not Mac thought this. It's you're sharing what he's thinking, but in an insightful way, almost like the reader is getting kind of an inside peek. And it's so delicate the way you do it. And so it's like a spice, not like oh, look what I'm doing here.
No, I like to I want you to think that you're in his mind. And I want the way the book is written when he's the narrator to feel a certain way.
Yeah.
So that's Mac. So you're in Mac's mind and you want to then like him more, get to know him better, because you're really, I'm not hitting you over the head. You're reading it as he's thinking it.
Right. Now, here's an interesting thing, and we're going to keep drilling down on this. So I know the story's about Mac Decker. As I'm starting to read, for whatever reason, I didn't pick up Will, because all I'm thinking about is, the protagonist, which is great for me, because then at the end of that scene, which I will not say, it took my breath away, because I'm like, what? How does this? And then I had to go back and go, this must be the son.
Yes.
But boy, like you said, you told me the entire world without me knowing it, so that when you did the payoff at the end, I mean, it was so brilliantly done.
Well, that's just, we were talking earlier, this book I'd written first as a screenplay.
Yeah.
Now, I'm a huge fan of the outdoor photographer Jimmy Chin, who photographed Free Solo about Alex Honnold climbing El Capitan without ropes. Right now, just saying that, David, my palms are getting sweaty.
Yeah.
Because even though you're watching it, he's going to make it to the top, or they wouldn't show it.
Sure.
But even then, it's like, how did this guy do that? And then how did Jimmy Chin put these giant 35 millimeter or 70 millimeter cameras onto the face of El Capitan to film him, and he's been up on Everest and everything. So I was thinking, God, this guy, I'm in awe of what he does. I have to come up with a story to bring him to our neighborhood cinema, to the AMC or the Edwards Cinema, so you could go check him out, to watch, Brad Pitt chase Keanu Reeves or George Clooney up the Matterhorn.
Right.
And I've spent a lot of time in Europe. I'm Swiss, and a lot of time in Zermatt. And I watched these guys do that. And I thought, this is just the perfect vehicle, the most famous mountain in the world, the most iconic, recognizable peak.
Yeah.
Somehow Chris figured out to set a spy story that revolves around something happening there. And so the result is this book.
Well, and I think it's going to be just a monster hit. Monster.
Well, thank you.
Just a beast. And I was talking to the guys before you showed up, and they said, and Jonathan said, so what do you think about the book? And I'm like, I try not to be superfluous or overly dramatic, but I said, This is not in the top 10
Mm.
of my favorite books of this show so far. It's in my top 5.
Well, that's very kind of you. Thank you.
And I'm not just saying that because I did not want the book to end, first of all. And when I found out that you're going to make it a series, I'm like, thank you, universe, for making another one. But
Well,
anyway,
good.
so it just stunning. And here's why. I mean, it has everything I want. It starts out of the gate at 65 miles an hour. It's got all the spycraft that you want, a compelling story, satisfying read, and a love story. Hello.
You have to have the love story. You have to have the emotional element to draw people in. I mean, that's the why. What's the why of the book?
Yeah.
You know, the why is a guy solving his son's murder, but then he's discovering all the life that he's left behind. You know, was the sacrifice he made, what was it worth? And now he has to kind of come back and make all those choices, not worthwhile, but he has to say, I did this for the right reason. And part of it, of course, is the romance with his former Mossad partner, Ava Attal, you know, the dark-haired,
Yeah.
you know, Israeli beauty.
Yeah.
I love Israeli Mossad Asians. Something about that is so sexy.
Sure.
They're
Sure.
so kick-ass,
Yeah.
so beautiful. I spent plenty of time in Israel. I love that country. I love the people there. Just a different kind of attitude in life. And so it was a pleasure and fun to bring her. And she is very much in the next book as well. So,
Well, and let's talk about the bad guy in this story, who also shares an affinity toward.
well, the bad guy is Mac's former partner, former climbing partner, first of all, a former dirtbagger, where they would, you know, they were best friends, even closer than best friends, people that climb these peaks where they hold each other's lives in their hands. That's not just friendship. That's more. That's complete reliability. I mean, 100%. I'm in your hands. And so they both follow the same kind of career path. They leave climbing to join the Marines. They become snipers. They transition laterally to the Central Intelligence Agency. And these careers are based upon real people. Okay. There's based upon people. One guy I know, who was with the Marine Special Operations Command and then went into the CIA and actually disappeared. Last time I met with him, he goes, Chris, he goes, I'm not going to be able to see you anymore. I'm taking this new job and I'm going to be scrubbed. I said, what does that mean? He goes, well, I'm going to be eliminated from all mention of me from the internet will be disappeared. You won't be able to find me. And I go, what kind of job are you doing? He goes, well, obviously I can't really tell you, but it'll be, you know, under a different identity and be involved in kind of the stuff that you write about. So I thought, wow, that's cool. And I swear 3 months later, I started looking and this guy's name was gone.
Wow.
And he had been a former gunnery sergeant in the Marine Corps. He'd just been actually promoted to a first sergeant or with a rank above that. So there was plenty of mentions of him before, and all of a sudden, zip, it's gone. So these characters are real. And in this book, the bad guy, kind of one of the bad guys, Ilya Ivashka, was an American born of Russian parents, but I mean American to the core, who then, for reasons as their career progresses, decides he has to to find his own identity, betray his best friend.
Heartbreaking. And what a superb bad guy, though.
Bad guys, David, are always the most fun to write.
Sure.
Because you could have so much fun with them. It's so hard to write a really interesting good guy.
Yeah.
You know, and that's why you were mentioning Don Winslow in his books. You know, even the good guys are bad guys. And especially the latest series, because they're all criminals.
Oh, yeah.
They're all crooks to begin with. So it's just kind of honor among thieves, but they're still thieves.
Yeah.
In my books, the good guys are good guys. So you have to make them much more nuanced. And the bad guys are, you know, this guy's a drinking problem. He loves sex. He likes all kinds of, you know, low-born women, let's say. And he'll do whatever it takes to succeed, you know, kill whoever he has to, bribe whoever he has to, you know. And so he is just so much fun to write.
Karma's a bitch, as we learn later in the story. So I wanted to make sure that I covered the men, the mountain, and the message. So we've covered the men.
Mm-hmm.
I want to go to the mountain. Now you've been there. I'm assuming you've climbed it.
I have not. I've climbed halfway up once and I got snowed out, and I was trained really hard to go last summer because I wanted to film it and then use it to promote the book. But sadly, I was taking care of my 94-year-old mother, who recently passed away, and I could not go away for the amount of time it took to go and get acclimatized and at my age train and do this thing. The climb itself, David, is only for even, they say the Matterhorn is the easiest mountain for a really good climber to go up and down, and it's the hardest for kind of a beginner climber. It's really about 4.5 hours up, 4.5 hours down. You're going 4,000 feet straight up and 4,000 feet down. Everyone dies coming down. No one ever dies going up. They all die coming down. Because when you're going up, you can hold on to something, right?
Right.
And when you're coming down, you're literally coming down the spine of a mountain with 4,000 feet on every side of you. And it's so overwhelmingly not frightening, but it's just, you have to pay so much more attention. It's windy. Most of all, it's just a feat of pure, it's kind of like running 2 marathons, running a marathon up, running a marathon down at that altitude. That's the hard part of it. Okay. But like I say, it's very doable. And I say about people die, if you go with the Swiss guide, like I'm planning on going back up this summer. Okay?
Oh, you are going to do it?
I'm going to go this summer.
Yeah.
And when I go with a guide, you never die with a guide. So they'll stop you before you do something.
Wait, you never die with a guide?
Swiss guides have never once, if you're going up with one of the guides that has their license and they work out of the climbing shop in Zermatt, they don't die. They're not going to let you die. And first of all, they're not going to let you go up unless they know you could do it,
Right.
And so before I had done all the training climbs beforehand, and I remember the last time I went, he goes, Chris, we'll go up we're going to go up in 2 days. He goes, but it's going to be the hardest day of your life. And I go, well, thank you for that vote of confidence.
But you're excited about it.
Oh yeah, I love it. It's great.
And what kind of training, just for curiosity?
Well, I do F45 3 times a week, which is the new functional fitness. It's a big chain. It's kind of promoted by Mark Wahlberg, where you go in for 45 minutes and they just bust your butt. All these just constantly one exercise to the next. Doing burpees, a lot of kind of bear crawls, but then with weights. So you're mixing up everything.
Yeah.
It's really fun. And your heart rate is at 150 the whole time. Up your VO2 max rate, which is your oxygen utilization. I do that. Now I'm starting with the regular, with weight training with a guy. So, at my age, you got to take it pretty seriously.
Yeah. Not pretty, very.
But what's fun about the Matterhorn and what makes this book different is
we're going to take a short break to thank our sponsors, and we'll be right back. Stay with us.
Today's episode is sponsored by Blackstone Publishing and the new thriller 4 Minutes by the best-selling authors of the Sons of Valor series, Brian Andrews and Jeff Wilson. When Special Ops Chief Tyler Brooks is recruited to lead an elite new squad to face an unpredictable enemy, he's promised access to mind-bending technology, the ability to glimpse into the future, collecting intel to stop attacks in the present. But when a plot to attack America, threatening the lives of millions, is discovered, is 4 minutes enough time to change the outcome? This new techno-thriller will have you on the edge of your seat until the very last page. 4 Minutes is available now from your favorite bookseller.
And now, back to the show.
What makes this book different is these days, okay, I need 4.5 hours to go up and 4 hours to come down. The guides have races to go up and down as fast as they can without ropes and without any kind of safety mechanism. And they will go up in about 65, 70 minutes and even faster coming down, which is like a mountain goat, because the Matterhorn is never quite vertical. And there's a lot of loose rock and there's a lot of steps. So it's basically ascending kind of a staircase where there's always some place for your feet. But one mistake, one misplaced foot, and boom, there you're gone. You're dead. 4,000 feet, nothing stopping you. That's a long way to fall. That's a long way to think before you hit those rocks, So, but, these guys that helped me with this book, one in particular, Andy Steindl, who's a guy who has one of the records, he sets it, then his best friend, breaks it. So they were giving me advice on this book about, Chris, this makes sense. You can't do that. So I hope that when you're reading, especially the last act, which does take place on or around the Matterhorn, that you're kind of getting that scared feeling like, oh my God, this is what it feels like to climb the Matterhorn at full speed.
Well, there's a couple of things that are very interesting about this book, besides the obvious, and that is the sense of place. The place is a character. The way you weave in the different townships and the cities and the climate and the seasons. It's charming and welcoming. in amongst all this harrowing danger that's happening simultaneously. That's what makes the read. It's like a sandwich of all this goodness. You got and you got you've got this dualism going on that's so fascinating.
Well, I grew up a lot overseas,
Mhm.
and the hallmark of all my books, from the first one, Numbered Account, which of course is set in Zurich and where I'd worked as a Swiss banker.
That would be this one, because I had you bring this in because I wanted to know where you started. So I wanted you to finish this story. Sorry to interrupt you, but I got a real specific question on that.
No, my pleasure. So my point was that I try to make my books the hallmark of a Christopher Reich thriller is that they're all very international.
Right.
I think I've written one book, Invasion of Privacy, that was in the United States, and set in Austin, Texas, where I lived and worked. But when you read my books, it's going to be a travelogue, and that's my favorite part, is to tell people, quick descriptions about where the feel of the place, the food you eat, the way the air smells, all that.
Well, and that to me is to be able to tell that minutia of detail and still keep the story moving is the sign of a real craftsman, because you can get bogged down in he walked into the room and then you describe the room in detail like a Thomas Wolfe, where you're like, oh my God, 74 pages later, I forgot why I came into the room.
I call that's the Scrimshaw error. The Scrimshaw is from Herman Melville Moby Dick, where he writes 50 pages straight about Scrimshaw, which is the art of carving onto ivory. It's like, what happened to Moby Dick?
Yeah.
So as a rule, as a writer, and I follow this now really assiduously, is, you got no more than a short paragraph of description, back to action. You're in a room, give me 2 lines of the room, then what's happening? Give me dialogue. You just got to keep it moving. And if you pick the right words, and you forget, readers have great imaginations.
Yeah.
You just got to spark the imagination, and they're going to let their mind do the work, and it's much more immersive that way.
Yeah. Let me get this straight. At the age of 32, you left corporate to chase this, full-time career as a novelist. First of all, how brave is that? Second of all, how do you shoot out of the gate at your first attempt? This went on to sell very well.
It's almost 2 million copies worldwide, yeah, which is a lot,
Yeah.
especially these days.
Now, granted, this was, what year was this?
It published in January 1998, coming up on 30 years.
Wow.
I know. So I left corporate world. I was a Swiss banker. That's about my time working for the Union Bank of Switzerland in Geneva and Zurich. I left that to run a Swiss watch company for 6 years in Neuchâtel, Switzerland. And that kind of petered out. And I decided that I wanted a new career. And I was newly married. I had a little bit of money in the bank. And I said, I want to be a novelist. And, I set my sights high. I did not want to be a starving artist. I wanted to write best-selling fiction, the kind that I'd read since I'd grown up. Ken Follett, Frederick Forsyth, Tom Clancy, Robert Ludlum, John Grisham.
Yeah.
All that stuff. That's what that's who taught me how to write. John le Carré.
Yeah.
Who's my absolute favorite. So I said, I'm going to give myself the chance to succeed. So we left Switzerland and moved back to Austin, Texas. Had, like I said, a little money in the bank, and said, I'm going to, I always say, you only make a first impression once. Okay. So when you write the first book, it better be pretty good.
Yeah.
And so I had these books. I used The Eye of the Needle by Ken Follett,
Yeah.
The Key to Rebecca by Ken Follett, and The Night Manager by John le Carré as my models. So, and I say this to aspiring writers, don't try to break the mold or make something new. Pick one of your favorite books that's in your genre and try to write it like that. Now, I'm not saying copying it, nothing like that.
Yeah.
No plagiarism, but use that as a template.
Yeah.
And that's what I did. So look at how Ken Follett does this. Short declarative sentences. He switches his point of view. Each character is distinctive, always building suspense. And I just kind of copied Ken Follett, really.
Yeah.
And it turned out well. So, I was very lucky with this book, though. The backstory of how this book got published, and Napoleon said, remember what Napoleon said? He said, I want my generals lucky, not good. And I got lucky. When I was writing the book, first I was humble. I'd given it to some people to read, and they made some serious critiques, and I followed their critique. I mean, this book took me, number to count, 9 months to write 660 pages, right? That was first draft. And I gave it to a woman that was in my apartment complex in Austin. She was studying her MFA there, and she read it. She goes, Chris, it's you're a pretty good writer. He goes, but this story makes no sense. You have to completely reorder this. And I took her advice. I didn't say, oh, I know better. It's like, you're pretty smart, I think. And so I took 4 months and I started rewriting the whole thing, right?
Wow.
And then I was able to get the book into the hands of a family friend named Farland Myers. And Farland, God rest his soul, he worked at a big ad agency called J. Walter Thompson in LA. And his boss was James Patterson, the James Patterson. But it was before he was the James Patterson. Back then, this is 1996, there was another Patterson who was much more famous, Richard North Patterson, who'd written a book called Degree of Guilt, which was a just mega bestseller. And Jim, or as we call him in my house, St. James, he wasn't famous yet, but he actually read the first pages of my book. And then he called me up. He said, Chris, I read the first 50 pages of Number to Count. He goes, it's really good.
Wow.
He goes, I'm going to break my rule and I'm going to tell my agent that he should represent you. And an hour later, I get this phone call from Richard Pine, my agent to this date. He says, Chris, this reminded me of the old Robert Ludlum books in the back alleys of Zurich with the cobblestones and the cold air and the bad guy lurking behind the corners, and the great conspiracy. He goes, I would like to represent you.
Wow. That is so crazy.
So I never wrote one letter, what do you call it? One,
query
solicitation,
letter,
one query, never wrote. I had got this, so I was just the luckiest writer in the world, period.
Wow. James has done okay for himself.
He's done okay for himself, and he's just the nicest, most giving human being. He's just a really great guy. He knows that there's enough success for everybody, and he's always willing to help others, to lend a blurb, and certainly, obviously, in my case, it was a lot more hands-on. So, yeah, thank you, James Patterson.
So we've got the men, the mountain, and the message. Is there a message that Chris would like his audience to walk away from this book with?
It's a message that I carry. It's like, never give up.
Yeah.
You can't give up. There's no money in not trying. There's no money in saying, oh, I give up. You have to keep it going to the end. And also, I don't know, revenge is not a dish best served cold. Revenge is a dish best served hot and bloody right in your face. And, that was, these books get violent, and it's all about doing the right thing and seeing justice done.
Yeah.
And I hope that, at the end of this book, you feel justice is done and you shed a tear because you see that, that good things are kind of ahead, and you're wondering what will come next for Mac Decker, for Ava, for his family. There's extended family that's all involved kind of in the family business, which is intelligence.
Yeah. I will say the conclusion is very satisfying. I won't say anything more than that because that would be just not right.
Well, thank you. All these books, they're not just thrill rides, but they're emotional too. And I wanted that emotional closure. And you're thinking, okay, things have turned out pretty nicely. What's going to happen next? Where is he going next? Because a man like Mac, he's going somewhere.
There are a couple of notes I made for myself, things that I did not know. And then there are like some of these agents, the agents that's being developed by bad hands. I'm trying to keep it as, though this is all doable right this minute, isn't it?
Everything in here is based on reality. This is all super doable.
Which makes it even the more terrifying.
Well, one of my themes in my books is the supra empowerment of the individual. With the internet, with all these technological tools in our hands, I mean, you're giving individuals the power and the capabilities that used to only be available to entire national intelligence agencies.
Right.
In the book, there's a scene where he accesses a certain database.
Yeah.
And these days now with AI and how you scrape the internet for pictures that, I know, for example, that spying right now, covert agents have a real problem because you can't disguise yourself anymore because there's a facial recognition everywhere. And I talk about this in the book, and I do mean everywhere, from the streets to the airports to banks. I mean, and intelligence agencies have the capabilities to tie into these. What do you think the NSA does?
Exactly.
They spend $40 billion a year to suck up all this information. I don't know if you know, but every single text message you write, every voicemail you get is being captured right now and stored at a facility in Utah. It's all there, but apparently they can only access it with a subpoena or a court order, but it's there. The point is your information has been vacuumed up and it's sitting there just for the right time when someone decides to look into you. So it's so mind-boggling what is going on with AI, with the NSA, with hacking and all these tools that, nothing is safe, nothing is sacrosanct. There's no more privacy. Done. Fact.
Mic drop. There is I'm going to have some fun here because here's one tiny little paragraph that I made a note to myself. So much information in a tight paragraph. Because he and Mac were the best at what they did, liquidating the opposition, taking out targets, posting numbers on the scoreboard. More accurately, putting a Black Hills 250-grain slug into the skull of a man or a woman at 1,000 yards with a 20-mile-per-hour crosswind and an altitude differential at 200 feet.
I think I owe Stephen Hunter, the great writer, something about that because he's the ultimate assassin and sniper writer and one of my favorite writers ever. But yeah, isn't that fun? I mean, that's what they do. It is a science.
A, I love the science of it. B, I love the minimalism of that paragraph. What you created an entire scene in 1, 2, 3, 5 sentences. Stephen Hunt, it makes me think of the movie Shooter with Mark Wahlberg. I've seen it 20 times. That watermelon or can of Spam across 2,000 yards or something. Anyway, things like that, I totally dig. The fact that on chapter 26, you mentioned Stan Getz's Desafinado, which is one of my favorite.
Me too. I was not much of an athlete as a kid. I was the piano player for the orchestra at Harvard School for Boys just across the valley. And in the jazz band, that was a staple of the jazz band. Desafinado, of course.
Great little story, if you'll allow me. So I'm hanging out. I'm in my first tour of duty in Los Angeles. So I lived there 3 different times before I moved to San Diego. And I had a friend, Al Schmidt. We're hanging out one day, and he has a friend come to visit. And a guy walks in, and I look at him like, God, you look familiar. I don't know why you look familiar. He goes, so what's your name? He goes, Steve. Oh, hi, Steve. He said, hey, can I crash here for a few days? I'm like, sure. So we're hanging out, and all of a sudden music gets talked about. And I have on my turntable at the time, a Strud Gilberto, Impanema, right? And he goes, oh, yeah, what a great song. I'm like, yeah, it's one of my favorites. Yeah, my dad really nailed it with that. I'm like, what's that? I'd never asked his last name. So Steve Getz, his dad is Stan Getz. And he's hanging out on my couch for a week. And he goes, David, let me tell you that story. He goes, I'm a kid. I'm in the kitchen. Astrud is cooking at the stove. And my dad is playing this in the background. And she's just, and he goes, wait, sing that again. He liked it so much, took her into the studio the next day. History was made.
Stan Getz is one of the greatest alto players ever. I mean, one of the greatest players of anything ever. I think we forget that Brazilian explosion that took the country by storm in the 60s and early 70s. Stan Getz, Astrid Gilberto, Sergio Mendes.
Yeah.
I love that.
Yeah. I put it on the drive up from San Diego today so I could get in the mood. Because whenever I feel, if I'm too preoccupied or down, I put on Bossa Nova, Stan Getz, and it just makes the world a better place.
I agree.
So I just wanted to share that.
So you say your tour of duty, were you an FBI agent or
no?
Cop
I use that playfully because when you get into Hollywood business, I was acting, voiceover, and so forth. It is a tour of duty because you got to be in shape and prepared mentally for that. And I happen to go back because I'm a masochist. I went 3 times, and we see where that got me. But yeah, uh, I loved when we talk about your setting and your sense of place. Ava and Mac had left Zurich an hour earlier. They had passed Zug and the Zugger Sea and transited Lucerne, passing the Sprauer Bridge. The sky darkened. Cloud mist hovered over Lake Lucerne. Its water as green as ivy, its surface smooth as ice. The highway followed the contours of the lake, long, languid curves at the water's edge. To their right, foothills grew to mountains. Hillocks yielded to sheer rock faces. You span this delicate balance between literary and just balls out action thriller, which is such a deft maneuver to make, which is why I just respect the craftsmanship and enjoy the talent.
Well, thank you very much.
Yeah.
Just I'm a big reader.
Yeah, it's obvious.
So I don't just read my work. I read primarily nonfiction now.
Yeah.
And so and just having I try to aim for a certain level of a skill level, let's say. So but thank you. I'm glad you like it.
Yeah, it's stunning. And I'm let's see if there's a few more things. Oh yeah, I asked the questions about, well, one of the key elements that's going to happen in this book, which I will not mention, which we referenced earlier about, is, wait, can that actually be done? I've had the thought before, but probably thousands of us have had the thought before. Hey, if I were going to take down a country, what would be the easiest or one of the most one of the easiest ways to do it on a very large scale, rather simply? And when I read that, which I will not say, down around the end of the book, I was like,
well, I got this idea. For one of my books, one of the rules books, I spent a lot of time with the FBI counterterrorism team in New York City. And that was comprised of agents from a number of different 3-letter agencies. One of them was the guy from the Bureau, was it? He was in charge of guarding the New York aqueduct. See, the water that comes from New York, that's a hard target. That's a very hard target, because if you can poison the water supply in New York, New York City has like the best water supply, the cleanest waters coming from upstate New York, from Canada, whatever. But if you could poison that water, you're going into 7 million households, in Manhattan and the greater New York area. So that place is freaking guarded like Fort Knox, because if you can put any kind of nerve agent or stuff like that, it's so powerful, the stuff they have now. It's scary, right?
yeah,
So I took that idea, and having spent some time with this agent, and then used it in this book about what would happen if you were able to poison a water supply.
yeah. Well, there you go. I am curious, and I know, having been around this business long enough, that you're already working on the sequel. Have to be, right? How far into that process are you? And
Not far enough. No, I'm on
Okay.
page about 110.
okay,
And I have the story, I have a great opening. It starts out in Paris a year after this book ends. It starts off with Mac. He has a wedding ring in his pocket.
Yeah.
He's at the restaurant Jules Verne, or in the second floor of the Eiffel Tower, this beautiful Michelin-starred restaurant looking out over Paris. He's been granted his freedom. The CIA has come to him and says, it's all forgotten. You're a free man. Just keep your head low. Don't get involved. Don't talk to us, but live your life.
yeah,
So here he is. And Ava's sitting across, and he's about to pull the ring out and ask her to marry him. It's, popping the question.
right.
And just as he's about to do this, she goes, "Oh, I got a call. Excuse me." So she gets up and leaves the table and doesn't come back. And he gets up and he tries to find her. But the thing about this restaurant, David, there's only one way in and one way out, one elevator. It's a private elevator to this restaurant.
Right.
And no one's seen her. He searches the whole place, the elevator, no one's seen her. She's just gone. And that's the beginning of the book. Where'd she go? And he has to go figure out everything about it, And of course, the stakes escalate very rapidly.
Sure.
So it's a fun starting, a lot of emotion about being in love and about starting your life again with someone who means the world to you, and then having that carpet pulled out from under you.
So much autobiographical nuance in there, isn't there?
Yeah, exactly. You can't help it as a writer.
Right.
Always write what you know. And so, as I said, I got recently remarried very happily. So, and I'm wishing only the best for Mac.
Yeah. Folks, if you want to learn more, go to christopherreich.com. This book is just, like I said, top 5 easy of this year. And are there hints at this getting picked up?
It is getting picked up. We're about to finalize it.
Wait, what?
Oh yeah, it's been a lot of people want this just because it's so cinematic, and they know, people want to make meat and potatoes fair to get people to the movies. And
Yeah.
what could bring people to the movies more than two of the most famous actors climbing up one of the most famous mountains in the world? This is a cinematic experience. I'm about to close the deal. I can't say with who, but it's with a major production company. Actually, I could give you a hint. It's owned by the uh, biggest selling commercial music artist of the last 20 years. It's that person's production company. I can't say the name, but
Yeah.
right there. I mean, I was on the phone with him for 3 hours the other day, and getting all excited about this. So yeah, this is the first step. This is the first step in the process. I mentioned that my Simon Riss books are at Netflix UK with Edward Berger directing, been greenlit. So that's happening after 25 years, finally getting things made on the screen is very rewarding.
What is that thing? Now, I always close the show with this question. What is your best writing advice? And you did have some writing advice you've already given, but if you could expand on that just a little bit, what would you say for my listeners who are really going? Because we started off by saying, look at the competition. Look at the competition for our attention spans. Look at the competition of the volume of people trying to write bestsellers. I want to do this, someone says. I want to be like Chris, someone says.
I just give the advice that I use that worked for me, which is pick your genre. You can't leave your genre once you're in it. So
Yeah.
you're going to be in that box forever. Okay. Pick your genre, pick your favorite writer and someone that has a lot of success. Model your first work or works on other books that were successful in your category. Okay. Follow those rules and know the rules of the genre. The secret to writing best-selling fiction is to follow those rules intimately, exactly, but make the story seem fresh and new. So you have to have a certain expertise in an area. You're introducing yourself to the reading world. Who are you? Why should they read you? In my example, I was writing Number to Count. I was the former Swiss banker who is now pulling down the curtain and revealing the secrets of the super secret world of Swiss banking. Okay. So that's a reason to buy the book. That's a why. Why do I want to buy the book? 'Cause I want to learn about, oh my God, what really goes on in this organization. When you look at Patricia Cornwell,
Yeah.
why do you read Case Carpetta? You want to learn about CSI,
Forensic,
about that
yeah.
stuff, right? So you have to have, I think, to begin with a certain expertise.
Right.
And that's how you grab the attention of an agent, of a publisher.
Just as simple as that.
And give yourself the chance to succeed. Don't shortcut it. Do your best work. You only make a first impression once, and people don't want to keep going back to you and saying, oh, I hope it's getting better, or it was almost there. You really have to come out with a bang.
It's funny, and something you said made me think. I talk to a lot of writers, especially first-time writers. I want to do something completely original. And I always go, all right, first of all, great challenge, great Matterhorn to try to climb. But is that really the best, smartest choice? Because there's no template upon which to try to base that success.
Well, I mean, I think it's a silly idea, but I mean, what do you want out of a writing career?
Yeah.
I wanted to make money and support a family.
Yeah.
So I knew I had to write best-selling fiction. If you want to be experimental, go for it and get self-published, and, best of luck to you.
Get your beer money.
I'm not going to tell people what not to do. I just know what worked for me and what worked for Ken Follett and Robert Ludlum. Robert Ludlum was an actor. He didn't make it. he was a stage actor and he was doing voiceover, like you said, but in New York, and he said, God, I gotta do something else. So he wrote the first book, The Scarlatti Inheritance,
Yeah.
which was based on a lot of the old John Buchan, the Scottish first-rate thriller writer. So Ludlam, who was writing in 1971, said, I'm going back, I'm gonna copy this guy. Chris Reich started going, I'm gonna copy Ken Follett and John le Carre. So whoever today, copy Don Winslow.
Yeah.
Or use that as an example, use someone that's successful and the public wants to read that. I would be adverse or remiss to say, go write something experimental or wholly original.
Yeah.
Best of luck to you.
Well, it goes back to, do you want to make a living, or there's so much of that. I want to be an artist. And I'm like, really? Can art not figure into a career in writing? I mean, James Patterson will tell you, or Jim, as you say, will tell you, I'm not a literary guy. My book's nothing super fancy about it, but you want an airport read? You want to get on a flight in LA and have something riveting to read by the time you land in New York, a page turner, you kind of know what you're going to get. You know exactly what you're going to get. I'm your guy.
He knows what his public wants, and he's a master. He is the master at it. The funny story about Jim Patterson is when he became a writer, he was still being CEO of J. Walter Thompson Advertising Agency.
Yeah.
Now, Jim is a driven guy. He goes at 80 miles an hour. But people ask, well, why are his books written the way they are, which is this really short chapters, 3-4 pages? It's because when he started, he would get up at 5:30 in the morning and know, I only have till 7 to write before I have to take a shower and go to work and for my real job. So he only had time to craft 3 or 4 tight, propulsive chapters. And that's how his formula was born, out of necessity.
Oh, wow.
He couldn't sit there and write 20 pages. He goes, I want to write this book. I have this story to tell. Those first Alex Cross books are fantastic,
Well, I'm going to just wrap by saying that you have a new fan. I mean, I'm not just saying that because you're sitting here. When I read this book, and I probably could have easily blown through it in a heartbeat, but it's like a really good meal. You want to sit there and really savor it. But I said, because of the expertise and the sparseness, and while still being a complex thrill ride, I got to read more. So that's why I said, bring a number to count. I want to see where we went from here to here,
Big difference.
Yeah.
Big difference.
And how?
Well, number to count, it's a first book. Just look how long it is. It's very long. It's a lot more emotional. I let myself, I hadn't learned how to write yet. I was writing that one really from the heart. I hadn't learned to put that kind of exacting eye on my work and learned how to cut my sentences and say, okay, cut this paragraph in half. But that is my biggest selling book.
Yeah.
And people really responded to how heartfelt it was. And it's a thriller, but it's also a coming of age story. It's a kid trying to find his father's murderer. There's a lot longer descriptions of Switzerland in there. There's a lot longer digressions into Swiss banking.
Yeah.
Which is the expertise people wanted. So I think that served met the appetite of the reader's market in the year 1998, which is decidedly different than the year 2024.
Sure. Isn't it interesting? Did I hear this right? A son is seeking the revenge of his murdered father. A father is researching the demise of his murdered son.
This is pretty much in all my books, or not all, but most. There's someone gets murdered. You want to find out: a husband, a wife, a son, father, a relation, and that's the engine that gets the car started, gets the story going.
So, if you were to look back and you could go back to the Chris that wrote Number to Count, you could somehow go back in time and you could say, let me tell you what I'm going to know at 62. Let me tell you now.
Mm-hmm.
What would that be?
You can't go back. And I had to learn how to write. So, whenever I have a problem writing, my agent says, Chris, shut up, just write.
Yeah.
Because the writing solves the problems. but you can't think the problems out. You have to write them out. So, I mean, I don't think I could apply the rules that I have today to myself back then because I had to learn how to write. And that took, for this first book, a 600-page book. My new book's 330 pages.
Yeah.
So, writing is learning, and it's learning about yourself, really.
Sure.
So it's hard for me to apply those rules. I would say, what rules? Yeah, it's like, make it quicker, cut out all the fancy words. Don't try to teach people, new words, things like that. The Hemingway called it the $10 words. Cut all those out and just tell the story.
I think it's funny that sometimes first-time writers, we've all done it, feels like if I throw in those $10 words, I'll impress my reader.
Mm-hmm.
If I really extrapolate all this vast knowledge and I just really stack the deck in information, they're going to be so impressed. When in reality, I'm never impressed with that. I'm like, get to the story.
Indeed.
Yeah.
That's true.
Yeah. All right. Last thing, because I always end up with the best writing advice, but you've already answered that. But I'm always curious. This is one of the things I throw in every once in a while called rapid fire questions, but it's just one question. If you and your wife, your new wife, and I and my wife were going to sit down for a nice dinner there in Newport Beach, and you could invite 2 more people, living or dead, to join us for this little some soiree, who would it be and why?
Wow, that's too hard of a question. Who would it be?
Yeah.
2 most famous people. Who would I want to meet?
It could be any genre,
Sure.
dead or alive. It could be.
Trying to think of something interesting. I've just been reading. I'd like to meet Henry VIII.
Yeah.
I've just read all the Hilary Mantel's books. So actually, no, not Henry VIII. Thomas Cromwell, his great advisor who ended up being beheaded. He was the first Superman of his age. I mean, he was a soldier. He was a brilliant diplomat. He was the first real king's advisor. He streamlined the English government. So I'll take Thomas Cromwell because I've read so much about him. Now, who else would I like to meet? I mean, Jesus is maybe one of the, I'm not really religious, but Jesus is one of them.
Be a fascinating dinner,
Napoleon I'd like to meet.
Yeah.
I love history.
Yeah.
So I'd love to. So let's go with Thomas Cromwell and Napoleon Bonaparte.
Awesome. Thank you again for making this happen.
David, thank you for having me. It was a pleasure.
Yeah, I feel like I could sit here and talk to you just all day long. But
very good.
Instead, why don't we go grab lunch?
Let's do that.
All right.
The Thriller Zone has been presented by Blackstone Publishing and the exciting new techno thriller 4 Minutes, now available from your favorite bookseller. Learn more at blackstonepublishing.com.